The last dress the maid ever saw in the queen's hands was a sheer silk gown, the color of aged wine, hem soaked in something darker. No one asked why. They bowed instead, as if silence was a uniform required by the palace. Her private chamber stood atop the western tower, where no sunlight ever fully pierced through the triple layers of black velvet curtains. One of those layers wasn't for Brisset, was a door, and behind that door, a wardrobe, and inside that wardrobe, something no one dared imagine. They whispered that she had a habit of selecting a new maid each season. With each new season came a new girl, but no one ever saw the previous one leave. Their names vanished quietly from the staff registry. No farewells, no funerals, no bodies, just absence, as if they had never been born. A former cook recalled seeing one girl barefoot, gown torn running through the corridor one night, muttering like someone caught between dreaming and drowning. She was stopped before reaching the main gate. And then she too ceased to exist. The queen was discreet, not modest discreet in a way that chilled the bones. When she entered a room, the air seemed to collapse inward. No one moved. No one dared cough. The only sound was the soft scrape of fabric on stone, like a scalpel brushing skin. She never raised her voice. She didn't need to. A single glance could make the most powerful hand tremble as it lifted a wine glass. And she was beautiful, devastatingly so, the kind of beauty that words defile when they try to describe it. Hair black as poured ink, skin pale like polished wax, lips always sealed, holding in all the things that should never be spoken. But that beauty did not soothe. It frightened. It belonged not to the living. They say she loved once, just once, before the crown, before the blood, when she was still a princess with soft fingers and defiance in her spine. She slipped away one night to meet a palace guard. They were caught. He was beheaded the next morning, his skull mounted at the city gate, and Shesh did not cry. She watched and never smiled again. When her father died and the crown slid onto her head, the court waited for a royal marriage. She declined. Princes, dukes, foreign kings each turned away. Some left sick. One died at the welcome feast. His death was never documented in the annals. Once, the palace echoed with music and perfume, laughter spilling from every marble hall. Then, silence crept in, slowly, patiently. It began when she rebuilt her personal chambers. No one was allowed in, except her, and the chosen maids. Always one. Only once. A gatekeeper recalled strange sounds one night. Not screams, not thuds, whispers, dozens of whispers, as if many mouths were praying at once. But at dawn, only the queen emerged. Her gown the color of blood-dark wine, her eyes unnervingly bright. They said she changed dresses each time someone disappeared. A silent ritual, her wardrobe always full, yet untouchable. Every dress a memory, a disappearance, a death. Then, the room was discovered, not through boldness, but by smell. A new servant, unaware of the rules, opened the door to clean. She screamed once, only once. And after that, she no longer spoke. Not because she refused, but because she could not. She traced circles in the air and wept at sunlight. They said there was a body in the wardrobe, folded, bent like fabric. A veil of silk covered the face, a wedding ring still on the hand, the dress, pure white bridal. No one questioned the queen, no one dared. Those who understood kept quiet and cleaned up. The wardrobe was closed, locked, but the key remained in her possession. After that night, she wore only black, and never changed again. She never explained why. It was, after all, a beautiful kingdom. Sunlight poured into courtyards of pale stone. Gardens bloomed year-round, tended by invisible hands. Banquets were held weekly, and no plate was ever served cold. The nobles wore velvet and arrogance in equal measure. They bowed when required, clapped when expected, laughed on command. All was well, or so it appeared. No one questioned why the queen never appeared at these feasts. They toasted in her name regardless, eyes carefully avoiding the vacant throne. They preferred it that way. Her absence made them feel safe. She ruled without speaking. Decrees were written, signed, and sealed, in ink as dark as dried blood. Her ministers never saw her write them. The papers simply appeared, as if conjured. No one ever challenged a word. The queen's signature was enough. They said she had a study, a hidden one, with shelves lined not with books, but portraits painted faces of girls, none older than 20, each captured in solemn stillness. Some were recognizable. Most were not. The resemblance between them was never mentioned. The same eyes, the same gentle curve of the jaw, the same quiet smile, as if each had been painted a moment before they stopped breathing. A court painter once vanished after his third session with the Queen. His final worker girl in ivory lace, hands folded, eyes open, but lifeless, was discovered days later behind a curtain in the East Hall. No signature, no frame, just a painting propped against the wall, drying slowly in the cold. The Queen walked the halls late at night, alone, her footsteps soft, deliberate. The guards were instructed to look away. Those who didn't, those who dared glance at her face in candlelight, were replaced by mourning. The replacements never asked why. And still, she remained adored. Feared, yes, but adored. The people loved her from a distance. She brought stability. No wars, no uprisings. Taxes were fair. Roads were safe. The crown was clean, polished by terror and silence. No one dared sully it with rebellion. Once, an ambassador from the north arrived with gifts, rare spices, silk, a marriage proposal. He was young, handsome, arrogant. At the welcome banquet, he lifted his goblet and toasted to the Queen's lips may they one day smile again. She looked at him, not a word, not a blink. 3 days later, he fell from his balcony. His horse returned north alone. The Queen didn't punish. She didn't need to. Punishment implied anger, and anger implied humanity. What she gave instead was disappearance. There were stories, always stories. The girl who sang too sweetly in the garden, the chambermaid who wore perfume, the noble daughter who danced too close to the wrong prince, all gone. Their names spoken once, then never again. And then came Elise. Elise was not like the others. She had fire in her voice, and her laughter carried across marble halls. She did not lower her gaze. She did not whisper. When the Queen walked past, Elise curtsied but slowly, with eyes raised. No one knew where she came from. One day, she was simply there, a new addition to the Queen's attendants, selected, it was said, for her linguistic skills. She spoke 6 tongues, translated ancient texts, read poetry aloud in the afternoons. Her presence was tolerated. For a while, the Queen watched her. No one said so, but everyone felt it. The way silence followed Elise like a predator, the way mirrors near her cracked without cause, the way servants crossed themselves twice after speaking to her. There was something unfinished in Elise, something too alive. One night, the Queen requested tea. That request alone was enough to turn every hand to ice. She never requested, she demanded, she decreed, but this time it was a request, and Elise brought the tray herself. No one saw what happened next, only that Elise never returned to her chambers. Her books remained open, her shoes sat neatly at the edge of the bed, her comb still clutched a strand of red hair. But she was gone. The Queen appeared the next morning in a new gown, crimson velvet, a color she had not worn in years. She walked through the throne room slowly, as if savoring each step. The ministers bowed deeper than usual, and when she sat, she smiled. Not wide, not warm, just a curl, a flex of flesh, enough to silence the birds outside. The next week, the wardrobe was sealed. Not locked, sealed, with chains, with wax, with prayers. But still, the smell came. No one ever asked what had become of Elise. Her absence was simply absorbed, like a drop of ink in a dark pool. The palace did not grieve, the servants did not search, the ministers did not inquire. It was as if her existence had always been optional. The Queen resumed her routines without disruption. The crimson dress returned to the wardrobe, never worn again. Her steps regained their silence, her eyes their stillness, and the Holsons again held their breath. But something had changed. Not loud, not visible, just different. The air grew heavier, drapes no longer stirred with the wind. Mirrors showed only the viewer, never the room behind them. Candles refused to burn past midnight. A cat brought to the Queen's chamber hissed once and leapt from a 4-story window. It landed on the stone terrace below with a soft, final sound. The queen began speaking to herself. Not in madness, not in grief, in something colder. She was heard murmuring behind the closed doors of her chamber, not words of prayer, not lamentations, just numbers, lists, names, perhaps. One night, the guard stationed outside swore he heard 2 voices, both female, both calm, both speaking at once. When the door opened, only the queen stood there, her lips dry, her eyes unfocused. He never spoke of it again. Years passed. New ministers replaced the old. Nobles married, aged, died. The queen did not. Her face remained the same, her posture unchanged, her breath steady. Some said she drank a tincture made of crushed pearls and winter root. Others said she did not sleep at all. The truth was simpler. She had nothing to age for. The portraits in the hidden study multiplied. Quietly, the artist was never seen, but the faces kept appearing. Some now looked familiar. Daughters of officials, mistresses of generals, foreign guests, all in stillness, all in silence. The wardrobe remained sealed. Until one day, it wasn't. The wax was gone, the chains removed, the prayers no longer whispered, and yet no one had touched it. When the chambermaid entered to light the hearth, she found it ajar. Just enough for a shadow to leak out. She fainted. Upon waking, she spoke a single word Elysian bit off her own tongue. The queen did not react. She merely ordered the wardrobe burned. But it would not catch flame. Wood that had been soaked in oil remained cold. Sparks died before contact. The hinges, once rusted shut, now swung freely. The robes inside smelled not of decay, but of lavender, as if someone had just stepped away. Still, no one opened it fully, not even her. She began to sleep with the door open. The throne room, once lavish, now echoed. Guests declined invitations. Nobles feigned illness. Couriers left messages under doors instead of facing her. Her court became a vacuum, and she sat at the center, unmoved. She spoke rarely, and when she did, it was not of politics. She asked questions no one could answer. Do you remember the color of her eyes? How long does silk hold the warmth of skin? If 2 people disappear, but only one is missed, was the second ever real? No one replied. It is easy to say such things belong to the past. That cruelty cloaked in velvet and lace is a relic. That queens no longer vanish their rivals into satin tombs. That power now wears suits and sits behind microphones. But cruelty does not age. It changes attire. It updates its vocabulary. Today, names vanish from rosters for different reasons. Women disappear from rooms without screams. Files are deleted. Histories scrubbed. The wardrobe has changed shape, but it is still here. In offices, in marriages, in courts, in silence. And the question remains, heavier than ever. What is more terrifying, the monster who kills out of passion? Or the one who kills without blinking? There are no shrines for the quiet dead. No songs for the girl who vanished after tea. No monuments for the one whose body was folded, stitched, and shelved like a memory. But somewhere, her face remains, brushed in oil, framed in darkness. Still watching, the palace began to forget what daylight looked like. Curtains that were once pulled aside every morning now remained drawn. The tapestries dulled, gold faded. The queen did not change. But everything else did. Silence became thicker. It settled into corners like dust. Even footsteps grew quieter. Conversations shifted to glances. Laughter turned to nods. Language itself seemed to wither beneath the weight of what was not said. The ministers grew pale. They spent more time in their homes. Some feigned illness. Others retired early. Still, their replacements behaved the same. There was something about the air around her. It clung to their lungs. It made words dry up mid-sentence. Those who stayed long enough began to look alike tired, hollow-eyed, prematurely grey. No one lived near her. Her wing of the palace grew colder by design. Fires would not stay lit. Rugs remained damp to the touch. Doors creaked open by themselves. No one asked why. The queen seemed content. She took no lovers, no heirs, no distractions. Her rule continued with mathematical precision. Every law signed, every budget balanced. But not once did she step beyond the walls of the palace again. One day, A maid asked for leave. She was not ill. She was not injured. She simply said, "I'd like to remember who I am." She was never seen again. When asked, the queen tilted her head slightly. "Who?" she said. "Power has a way of undoing its host. It does not rot the skin, it dries the soul." In the early years, her silence was feared, but now it was ritual. A sacred stillness that surrounded her like armor. The fewer words she spoke, the stronger her control. They believed she could read minds, not because she claimed toe, but because each time someone considered leaving, they disappeared. Each time a rumor began, it ended with a scream no one admitted hearing. Some thought she had gone mad. Others insisted she was always like this. The difference mattered less each year, because she remained, because no one dared replace her. Because to dethrone her was to speak of her, and none wished to. In a land ruled by omission, her silence became doctrine. The portraits continued, one by one. No brush ever moved, no artist ever called. But the paintings arrived, sometimes leaning against a wall, other times already mounted in corners no one entered. Each new canvas more lifeless than the last. The eyes dimmed, the color faded. The women in them no longer looked like women, they looked like statistics. In time, the queen no longer visited the throne room. She ruled from her chamber. Decrees written in the dark. Orders passed through locked doors. Her attendants were not allowed to speak. They communicated through notes, eyes, nods. At some point, the royal language changed. Formality gave way to silence. Ritual replaced interaction. Ceremony became mimicry. Weddings were conducted without vows. Funerals without eulogies. Children were taught to listen, never to question. It is easy, perhaps, to judge them. To ask, why didn't they rebel? Why didn't they shout or run? But noise means nothing to those who no longer believe they are real. The people had forgotten their own shape. They moved like shadows beneath banners that no longer fluttered. They bowed because they had forgotten how to stand straight. They ate because hunger was easier than thinking. Only the queen remained herself. Or perhaps what remained was not her, but something older, something colder, something that learned to wear her skin like a robe. They say one night, a servant wandered too far. She found herself in the northern corridor, where the light never touched the walls. At the end stood a mirror, tall, dustless, unseen before. She approached, drawn not by curiosity, but by absence. When she looked in, she did not see herself. She saw Elise. Not as she was, but as she had become, bent, eyes open, smiling. The mirror cracked. She was found the next morning, not dead, just quiet. She whispered things no one understood. Equations, coordinates, then nothing. The mirror was never located. The queen never spoke of it. She didn't need to. Somewhere in that palace, her wardrobe still stood. Unlocked. Waiting. Time no longer mattered inside the palace. Days did not end. Nights did not begin. Candles were replaced before they burned out. Clocks stopped chiming. No one noticed. The queen had long since ceased to mark her birthdays. The calendar became ceremonial. Years were tallied only in silence. Visitors were rare. Those who came did not return with stories, only with silence. An ambassador from the East once spent an evening in her presence. Upon his return, he cut out his own tongue, carved runes into his chest, and walked naked into the sea. His nation never sent another. There were rumors of a second wardrobe, identical in shape, untouched by dust. But this one did not store gowns, it stored ledgers, pages of names, first names only written in ink that never faded. It was said the queen kept it beside her bed. She opened it every night, not to read, only to look. The names were not arranged alphabetically, they were ordered by disappearance. One page bore the name Elise, another had been torn out. A maid once claimed to have seen a page with her own name. When she tried to flee, her legs stopped responding. Her voice turned inside out. She died 2 days later. The doctor called it evaporation of will. There was no treatment. Still, the queen did not kill. She did not need to. Her power was no longer enacted. It was ambient. Like poison in the air, it no longer needed delivery. It worked through presence, through understanding, through the fear of being remembered. Some said she was a curse inherited, not a woman. Others said she had made a de-loaned soul for 1 year of control. If that were true, the palace was built on a mass grave. There were fewer people now. Not from war, not from illness, just fewer. Rooms were sealed, wings abandoned, statues lost their names, gardens grew wild, maps were no longer accurate. The Queen's palace became a country within a country, expanding inward while shrinking from view. No one ruled beside her. The idea of a successor had died generations ago. When asked who might rule after her, the ministers looked confused. After, they said, as if the word did not belong. The Queen never aged. Her hair remained black, her spine unbowed, her eyes dry. She no longer walked the halls. She floated, not in the sense of magic, but in the way light bends around something it does not understand. People looked at her and remembered things that never happened, childhoods they never lived, wounds they never received. She erased and replaced, just by existing. And then, the noise returned. Not all at once. First, a door slammed somewhere deep in the western wing, then a mirror shattered, then a songlow, wordless heard only in stairwells. A baby cried in a part of the palace where no children had been born for decades. The Queen did not react, but the wardrobe opened. It did not creak, it did not resist, it simply opened, as if called. Inside, only a single dress remained, white, crisp, folded perfectly. On top of it lay a note, not written by her. The handwriting was unfamiliar, the ink still wet. The paper read, "Do you remember the sound I made?" She burned the dress, not in fire, in sight. She looked at it until it ceased to exist. The palace trembled that night. Windows cracked from within, paint peeled in slow motion, marble turned porous, statues wept oil, a tapestry unraveled itself without touch. The guards did not abandon their posts, they simply forgot how to move. And still, the Queen did not speak. She only closed the wardrobe, then locked it, then turned away. The next morning, her attendants found her seated, facing the wall. Her hands were open, her face blank, her mouth smeared with blood knot from violence, from biting her own tongue. Not in pain, not in protest. In silence, she stayed in that position for hours, eyes open, facing the wall, breathing, but only because the body demanded it. Her attendants did not dare speak. They wiped her hands. They cleaned the dried blood from her mouth. She did not flinch. When they dressed her, she blinked once. That was permission enough. No new decrees were issued that month. The court went on without her. Ministers mimicked past decisions. They passed laws no one understood. No one protested. The Queen's absence was interpreted not as weakness, but as design. She had withdrawn. Therefore, it was sacred. Her silence was taken as strategy, as penance, as prophecy. On the 7th day, she stood. Not by effort, but inevitability, like a clock resuming after the battery has been replaced. She walked to the wardrobe. It remained closed. She placed her hand on the door and waited. Nothing moved. No scent leaked out. No sound escaped. Still, she listened. A long time. When she finally turned away, her eyes were wet. The palace shifted that night. Walls appeared where halls had been. Staircases no longer led where they once did. One maid reported opening a broom closet and finding herself facing the royal gallery, though the two were 6 corridors apart. Another servant vanished between the kitchens and the laundry room. He was never found. His shoes were, upright, side by side. The Queen ordered no investigation. She resumed her routines with mechanical precision. Breakfast, letters, silence, walks, not through the gardens, through empty rooms. She counted her steps aloud. 1, 2, 3. Her voice flat, like sand sliding through glass. The portraits continued to arrive. But now they were different. The women were no longer still. Their mouths opened, their eyes bled, their limbs bent at angles that betrayed anatomy. The painter had changed, or perhaps the subject had. Still, the Queen hung them. Each new portrait was placed beside the last. No pattern, no chronology, just accumulation. One visitor, a child of a foreign envoy, wandered too close to the portrait hall. She screamed, clawed at her own eyes, and refused to speak again. Her father withdrew his alliance. The queen sent no objection. The wardrobe remained sealed. Until it wasn't. It opened on its own. No hands touched it, no order was given. The hinges did not creak. The door simply parted, as if it had always been ajar, and no one had noticed. It opened slowly, deliberately, lovingly. Inside, there was no body. No folded limbs, no blood, no lace, just space, and a smell. Lavender, and something beneath it, older, wetter. The queen stood before it and said nothing. She did not flinch, did not reach inside. She only stared, as if recognizing something long forgotten, or long denied. A wind passed through the palace that night. No windows open, no doors ajar. It moved room to room, touching only mirrors. When it passed, each pane cracked, some shattered. All reflected nothing. In the morning, the queen was gone. Her gown lay folded at the foot of her bed, black silk, unwrinkled, no dust, no note, no sign of struggle. Her ring sat atop it, still warm. The throne remained empty for years. No one sat upon it, not out of reverence, out of fear. When a new monarch was finally crowned, the seat cracked beneath him. He chose a new throne, built it elsewhere. The wardrobe, no longer in her chamber, was placed in a locked room deep beneath the palace, sealed in stone. The key was thrown into the sea. Yet some nights, servants still report a scent in the halls. Lavender, and something else.